Ladies and gentlemen, we have huge news on the vaccine mandate front. Those of us who believe in individual rights and bodily autonomy have a major victory today. Joe Biden's vaccine mandate is officially suspended. He tried as hard as he could to bypass the Constitution, and he's done it several times, but this time he couldn't make it. Now, the war is not over. They will likely still try to get this through. And we already saw Joe Biden's administration tell businesses to ignore a court ruling freezing, putting a stay on the vaccine mandate. But now, OSHA, who was going to be implementing this rule that if you have 100 employees or more, you must mandate vaccines or testing, has caved, saying, due to the ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court, we have suspended the implementation of the vaccine mandate. But you know what? Joe Biden's strategy still worked. And this is what's scary. The corruption of the Biden administration knows no bounds. We're not just looking at this one story. There's many stories. But in this regard, let me start here. Joe Biden and his admin knew that by simply doing a press conference saying they'd mandate the vaccine, that businesses would just do it. They'd tell their employees, look, Biden said it, so you have to do it. There's no law. There was no mandate. It hadn't been implemented yet. There was no OSHA rule. They knew that when the courts got to it, it would be struck down. OSHA finally comes out and says vaccine mandate, and all these companies start rolling it out. Well, it's time to roll it back because they lost in court. But when Biden lost in court, his deputy press secretary comes out and says, ignore the court ruling and do it anyway. They did this with the eviction moratorium twice. The Supreme Court said you can't do it, and they said we're going to do it anyway. And the Supreme Court had to come back out and say you can't do this. Biden keeps bypassing the checks and balances and the other branches of government. He's bypassing legislature, implementing law by decree and through manipulation. And then when the courts strike him down, and it's not just him because I don't think he's all with it, his administration ignores it. Now, I got to tell you, the corruption of the Biden administration is so severe. I didn't know what story to talk about today. I was originally preparing to talk about how Biden's DOJ is using counter-terror tactics against parents concerned about wokeism. That's right. And Merrick Garland appears to have lied about it. And now the Republicans are furious, demanding they come back in, testify. I want Merrick Garland testify under oath about how they're using war on terror tactics on parents who are concerned about their schools. My friends, the Biden administration is broken beyond repair. They are corrupt. And all these stories come together. Now, we're currently awaiting a verdict in the Rittenhouse trial. And by the time you're watching this, it may come down. But for the time being, this is a huge, huge victory. And I hope you all find that optimism, because I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit more optimism throughout this segment, because I want you to realize the cause of freedom, I believe, is winning. Now, there are still risks. There is still the greater war. And I mean that figuratively and maybe in terms of a Cold War, literally. Just because we've won on this regard with OSHA suspending the rule doesn't mean they won't strike back with a vengeance. They are still challenging this. It still may come, but for the time being, we are standing, we are holding the center, we are standing our ground. We believe in freedom of the individual responsibility, and that the federal government does not have the right to mandate a permanent medical procedure in order to access goods. But let's go through this, and I will bring you through more than just the vaccine mandate. We're going to talk about the targeting of parents. We're going to talk about the failing economy, the lies of the media. You know how we like to handle this stuff. It's time we brought this together and point out that the Biden White House is one of the most corrupt, if not the most corrupt, we have seen in a long, long time. The targeting of James O'Keefe. Even the ACLU has come out in his defense. Local news outlets in his defense. That's how corrupt Biden's administration is. Now, before we get started, my friends, head over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast. And you won't want to miss it from last night, where we had Alex Jones, Blair White, Michael Malice, Drew Hernandez, Luke Rutkowski, me, Ian, all here for a major, massive show on Timcast IRL last night. Joe Rogan was here for about an hour before he had to leave. So he was here for the first half of the show. But we do have a members-only bonus segment. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. And as a member, you help support us hiring journalists, getting raw original reporting. We have a major breaking story about Fauci, animal abuse. Cassandra Fairbanks is on top of it. It's an exclusive report. You got to see this stuff. Become a member. Help support our work. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. let's get into the first story. This is from the National Law Review. Now, I'm not familiar with this source, but I did fact check this, and I thought they condensed it to a degree that it was easier for me to show you this article. So just because I'm not familiar with the source doesn't mean it's a bad source. This National Law Review seems to have a good job here. They report, OSHA suspends emergency temporary standard on COVID-19 vaccinations and testing for employers with 100 or more employees. Now, I want to stress, they have also said they are exploring a mandate on all businesses following this one. This is the line, my friends. You've got the Daily Wire, as I believe they're the lead plaintiff, suing Joe Biden over the mandate. Good. Good for them. But if they lose, and the vaccine mandate for 100 or more employees is considered to be constitutional, which I don't believe it will be, but if it is, they will come for small businesses next, which means us. Which means what? Single member LLCs? If you want to have an LLC, you will be mandated to test yourself? Now, hold on. I don't want to be too hyperbolic. My understanding is the rule says that if you're not around other people, you are exempt. Okay. Well, here's the report. They say on Thursday, November 4th, 2020, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration published an emergency temporary standard that establishes minimum COVID-19 vaccination and testing requirements for private employers with 100 or more employees. Shortly after the ETS was published, several states and businesses sued to declare the rule was unconstitutional and beyond OSHA's statutory authority. On November 6, 2021, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, based in New Orleans, issued a very short preliminary ruling staying implementation of the ETS pending further briefing in the court. Then, on November 12, 2021, the Fifth Circuit entered a long opinion in which it has issued a preliminary stay of the law. This is important. If you work for a company that has done this, you come out, you show them this report, you show them the statement from OSHA, and you challenge them. Now, private companies can still do this. They wanted a shield. Many of these private companies want to shield themselves from liability and say, look, we told you had to undergo an irreversible medical procedure to work here. But they want to pass the buck off to Biden. When Joe Biden comes out and says this, they can say, oh, geez, oh, no, it's not our fault. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. It's not our fault this happened. Right. They want to pass the buck, but now they can't. Now you can challenge them. They say, in doing so, the court signaled in the strongest possible terms that it was poised to find the rule does exceed OSHA's authority in several ways. You can read the entirety of their opinion. In recognition of the court's ruling, the administration declared yesterday that OSHA has suspended all activities relating to the implementation and enforcement of the ETS pending further litigation. However, this is still a temporary ruling and will be appealed most likely all the way to the Supreme Court, which would make the final decision. Although not expressly stated, this means that employers under the rule have a reprieve of the upcoming December 5th deadline and likely the January 4th, 2022 deadline as well, as the courts will take some time to provide much needed clarity in a final decision. This week, the Florida legislature is meeting in a special session in an effort to consider legislation that would countermand at least parts of the OSHA rule. Businesses should stay tuned to see what, if any, legislation is passed by the Florida legislature, how the courts will ultimately decide on the fate of the OSHA rule, and how these two will play out in the courts to determine that the OSHA rule is valid. I want to show you, I got it right here. This is from OSHA.gov. They announced on November 12th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit granted a motion to stay OSHA's COVID-19 vaccination and testing emergency temporary standard. Published on November 5th, the court ordered that OSHA take no steps to implement or enforce the ETS until further court order. While OSHA remains confident in its authority to protect workers in emergencies, OSHA has suspended activities related to the implementation and enforcement of the ETS pending future developments in litigation. The battle, my friends, we have won. It's not over, though. Senate Republicans to formally challenge Biden's OSHA vaccine mandate. Senator Mike Braun says Republicans are united against President Biden's vaccine mandate for businesses. Now, I'm sitting here, and I'm kind of sweating bullets on this one. The Rittenhouse trial, I think, is one of the biggest stories of our lifetimes, our right to self-defense. And I am just trapped in that mindset. But we need to recognize we cannot be distracted from the multiple fronts in the culture war that we are currently facing. A vaccine mandate opens the door to forced medical procedures, to papers, please, social credit systems, tracking of everything you do, and they already do, but now they want legal ability to enforce based on what they're tracking. Take into consideration this, you drive, right? Well, they're already saying they want to tax you per mile in California. What about watching TV? How much TV? If you watch TV tax, they want to restrict the amount of food you can eat, what kind of food you can eat. This is that door, and we are holding our ground. Senate Republicans, not a big fan of the Republican establishment, and I think in the upcoming midterms, we need to see some primary action. Get these establishment neocons out. But at least they're doing this. Fox News reports all 50 Senate Republicans on Wednesday morning are expected to formally challenge the Biden administration's vaccine rule for private businesses under the Congressional Review Act, the official process for Congress to eliminate an executive branch rule. GOP Senator Mike Braun of Indiana will lead all 49 of his Senate Republican colleagues, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, in moving to strike down the Biden admin's rule, which mandates employees at private businesses with 100 workers be fully vaccinated. Now, even though it's suspended, they will challenge this and bring it back. The Republicans, and I'm surprised it's all 50, mad respect, challenging this and saying, we will not let you bring this rule. President Biden's vaccine mandate is an unconstitutional invasion of what should be a personal medical decision for every American and an affront to the rights of 80 million American workers, Braun told Fox News today. My Republican colleagues and I will formally challenge the federal overreach, and I urge the Senate to vote in favor of this disapproval resolution when it comes to the floor for a filibuster-proof simple majority vote in early December. Now, don't forget, I want to make sure I show the source on this one. White House tells businesses to proceed with vaccine mandate despite court-ordered pause. I'm showing this because I want to make sure you all know I have sources to back up when I say the Biden administration is corrupt. Check this out. Thomas Massey says, companies should cease implementation of Biden's OSHA vaccine mandate because OSHA itself has ceased. OSHA says they've suspended the activities. I'm not going to sit here and just talk about Biden's vaccine mandate, though, because this is going to be a cornucopia of Biden corruption with sources to back it up. What they're doing is beyond reproach. What the Biden admin is doing is seeking to take away our right to self-defense, our right to self-determination, and quite literally to curtail our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, you may say that is extreme thing. When the government can mandate a permanent medical procedure, you're in trouble. Do not give them that ground. But let's talk about the political agenda of the Biden administration and those who support him and those he supports. Outside of the dramatic constitutional violations we've seen with Joe Biden and the eviction moratorium, we now have one of the most drastic and terrifying nightmare dystopia actions taken by the Biden administration, their DOJ. Kevin McCarthy slams Biden's DOJ after whistleblower reveals FBI used counter-terror tactics to investigate parents complaining about critical race theory, demands AG Garland prove he did not lie before Congress. I want to point out one other issue. Real quick. From timcast.com, ACLU denounces government's invasive searches and seizures of Project Veritas. I hope you've been paying attention. Jack Posobiec tweets that all the time. Are you paying attention yet? The FBI raided James O'Keefe's home and the home of several of his journalists and seized private privileged communications. And by all accounts, it appears they leaked privileged legal communications to the New York Times. Even the ACLU, that I call the Anti-Civil Liberties Union, came out and said that was wrong. The DOJ under Joe Biden is the most corrupt I've ever seen. I'm not surprised. Under Barack Obama, it was also particularly corrupt. The IRS, not part of the DOJ, but the IRS went after the Tea Party. They were using the weight of the federal government to go after their political rivals. But now they're going after you, parents. You know, I complain a lot about the people who say, I won't speak up because I have to feed my kids and I'm scared. I say, if you don't speak up, your kids won't have food. You don't believe me? How about this? Where's this from CNN.com? Thanksgiving essentials are out of stock. Now, why is that? It's because when the federal government engages in corrupt activities and lockdowns and restrictions, y'all said, not everybody, but these people were like, I'm not going to speak up because I'm worried about how my kids will get food and I don't want to stick my neck out. And your compliance led to major shortages this holiday season. Now, we're not starving to death. It's not the apocalypse yet. But you have to realize compliance will not get you out of tyranny. But There are many parents who spoke up to defend their children explicitly. Because one of the things we talked about, I talked about this with Steve Bannon and many others, that Steve Bannon said, when parents see what the state, what the schools are doing to their kids, they will revolt. He was right. Youngkin wins in Virginia. Loudoun County played a huge role in this. Parents said, my kids must be safe. Therefore, I won't speak up because if I take that risk, my kids can't eat. Other parents saw their kids directly threatened in these schools and said, if I don't speak up, my kids are being threatened. I have to stop this. You see, people's kids are strong motivators. Well, these parents spoke up and said no to wokeness, no to critical race theory. And what happened? Check this out. The Daily Mail reports House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy slammed Joe Biden's Justice Department for an egregious abuse of power on Tuesday and demanded Attorney General Merrick Garland testify before Congress about the counter-terror tactics the FBI is using to investigate parents. Quote, in an egregious abuse of power with the potential to unfairly track Americans' activities, President Biden's Department of Justice is using FBI criminal and counter-terror resources to target parents. Attorney General Garland must return to Congress to address under oath in detail the discrepancies regarding the directives he issued involving investigating American parents. Garland testified on October 21st that the Justice Department and its components were not using counter-terror tactics to target concerned parents at school board meetings. But Republicans say they have documentation that shows differently. McCarthy also blasted Biden for going after parents instead of actual threats. Quote, this is further proof that we have a president in the White House who is more interested in going after our own citizens, including concerned parents, than he is in going after actual threats. This raises the question that should alarm every American. If the Biden administration is using our country's top law enforcement agency to go after parents, what are the actual threats they are ignoring? How about far left extremists? The violence, the riots, the threats to the judge in Kenosha? The judge has received death threats. Witnesses, our friend Drew Hernandez has received death threats. Where is the FBI? Oh, I'm sorry. They're threatening you, mom and dad, who say, I want control of what my children learn in school. That's the threat. But you need to understand, when it comes to the corruption of the cult, Joe Biden and the White House and this ideology, the threat is not the extremists. No, they like that. The threat is you. So they will use the weight of federal law enforcement to come after you. And man, I had a rant about this when the news broke that James O'Keefe, a journalist, whether you like his reporting or not, he's a journalist. The feds raided his home, cuffed him, took his devices. And then by all accounts, everyone seems to agree on this. The FBI leaked privileged legal communications to the New York Times. Project Veritas is in a lawsuit with the New York Times. This is corruption to an extreme degree, to the extent the ACLU came out, as I mentioned earlier. I went off. My friends, this is Soviet style. This is Gestapo. This is Stasi. This is kicking your door in because you dare oppose the ideology of the cult. Despotic individuals, authoritarians, fascists, whatever you want to call them, are taking the reins of authority in this country. I love how the left has been saying it for so long. Fascists are taking over. But the problem is they were talking about the libertarians and the populists who are challenging the authoritarians because they're part of that cult. They're going to say, the House GOP leader was responding to the revelation the FBI has created a threat tag to flag all investigations into potentially criminal threats, harassment, and intimidation of educators. Now, I think it's fair to point out, nobody wants teachers to be threatened or school board members to be threatened. No, we don't want none of that. There was a story recently. We had it on timcast.com. A pro-woke, a critical race theory proponent, parent came in and threatened soldiers. This is what they do. This is what they do in Kenosha. It's what they do in Minnesota. The jurors in the Chauvin trial had to walk past rioters, or I should say the destruction from riots with armed police. In Kenosha, you have a jury deliberating right now as the extremists outside threaten violence. And the court case that they are deliberating on stems directly from the violence that the rioters committed. How are we supposed to have a fair trial? The extremists seek power, and they use terror to get it. They say Republicans argue this could be used to target parents protesting local education policies. Parents have taken to going to school board meetings to express concern about teaching of critical race theory, transgender policy, and other issues. We have this letter here. This is amazing. It says this is from a joint message from Criminal Investigation Division and Counterterrorism Division. On October 4th, 2021, the Attorney General forwarded a memorandum addressing a spike in harassment and intimidation. We get it. We share an obligation to ensure all individuals are able to do their jobs without threats of violence. As a result, the counterterrorism and criminal divisions created a threat tag, edu officials, to track instances of related threats. I'm not completely opposed to saying no to these threats. To this statement. What I mean to say is I am completely opposed to the threats. It's not how you win. In fact, it's fuel for the cult, for the Biden admin, for their DOJ. Violence doesn't work. I know. I've heard people say, Tim, you just talked about how Antifa gets away with it and does terror. Yeah, it works when they control the executive branch, the Department of Justice. It works when they control the media. We are in fourth and fifth generational warfare, and the reins of power at our media institutions are pro-violence for the left. They ignore it, they lie about it, they hide it. But if you are in any way opposed to the cathedral, to the cult, to the establishment, and you are seen protesting, they will call you the worst names in the book, which is why all of you must be peaceful, persuasive, and resourceful. Those three things, and we will win. And I'll give you proof. Well, I'll give you my argument on the proof. Let me just show you this story from timcast.com. Support for gun control hits lowest point since 2014. When I see constitutional carry sweeping across this country, I feel proud. I feel optimistic. The Second Amendment is the second most important amendment. And that's why it's the second. The First Amendment, the right to peaceably assemble, to a redress of grievances, freedom of religion, the press, speech, etc. The ability for us to express ourselves with the government being unable to say no to it. It's the most important thing in a free society, the ability to challenge the establishment. But what happens when that free press becomes an arm of the government? Well, it's no longer adversarial, but then you and I can still have these conversations. The Second Amendment. As Dave Chappelle said, the Second Amendment is just there in case the first one doesn't work out. The Constitution as a whole is meaningless without the right of the people to back up their right to challenge authoritarians and fascists and Nazis and all of the worst of the worst. But we don't want any of that. We don't want violence. We don't want chaos. We don't want death and destruction. As I stated, violence by anybody who's anti-establishment will be used to embolden the federal government's long reach and overreach. There are tens of millions of people in this country who I call politically uninitiated. They don't pay attention. They don't know. We are in an information war to convince people to adopt a certain culture, a culture of merit, of individual responsibility, of personal liberties and bodily autonomy. But there is an effort by the establishment to convince people against all of those things, to give up your rights, bend the knee to the state. And if people don't have the information and they don't know which way to go, then who will they side with? Laws can only be enforced if the culture agrees with the law. The most important thing for all of us right now is peaceful. We must reject violence. But the reason I say the gun control thing is important is because it shows you people are standing up for individual rights and the American Constitution within reason. We're winning for the cause of freedom. New Hampshire, the Free State Project. You guys got to check out the strong advances they've made. We are winning in Texas with a victory by Youngkin. Not perfect. I am not a fan of establishment Republicans or the Republican Party, but challenging the neocon and neoliberals of the Democrats has been fantastic. And seeing in New Jersey, I believe his name is Ed Durr, a state senator who ran with $153, no big campaign, beating a Democrat because people said, I will take anyone over the establishment. We are winning. Peaceful, persuasive, resourceful is winning. And they hate it. They do. But you know why it works? Antifa is violent. The riots take away support from the Democrats. And so what do? They cover it up. They need low-level sustained violence against people to keep them scared. They need a media apparatus to lie about everything to make sure people know that no matter what happens, we will lie about you. But it only works if people think the mainstream media is the path towards information and culture. So long as this channel exists, so long as you watch and you share, we are winning. Now, I'll point out, as I've said before, the zombie may be dumb, but a horde of zombies is dangerous. Winning doesn't mean won. This whole segment should be optimism for you. OSHA rule suspended. That's a victory in the battle, but not the war. And now we have this story here about people standing up for their rights. All should be good news. While I can point out what is going on with the targeting of parents is bad news, it's important to stress that in many respects, we are doing very, very well. Take a look at this. Let me go through this story, and then I want to talk to you about James O'Keefe. They say, the GOP saw education become a successful campaign issue in the 2019 Virginia gubernatorial election, where concerned parents came out in numbers to help their candidate win. The latest revelations came from an FBI whistleblower who provided an email dated October 20th to House Republicans, sent on behalf of the Counterterror Division and the Criminal Division. Interesting. An FBI whistleblower released this information. And now let's get serious. You ready for this? ACLU denounces government's invasive searches and seizures of Project Veritas. The FBI raided Project Veritas. I wonder why. Well, on the surface, they said it was over Ashley Biden's diary because they were trafficking in stolen goods or something like that. Now, I'll tell you what I think. It is a fact, at least according to the New York Times, that Project Veritas was investigating the FBI. Project Veritas has called for whistleblowers before. I believe they did, called for whistleblowers from law enforcement. So let's get dark. An FBI whistleblower leaked or sent a letter to the FBI with evidence that the DOJ is going after parents. Would an FBI whistleblower stop there? Perhaps they provided a similar statement to Project Veritas. And Project Veritas is vetting the information. And maybe the FBI found out this whistleblower, we don't know who it is, sent something to Veritas. What do we do? Do you sit back as the FBI and do nothing? And just wait for Veritas to expose your corruption? Or, under false pretext, do you raid the home of the founder, take his private communications, extract them to try and figure out what they know about what you've done, and then leak it to the New York Times? I think it's a strong possibility that Veritas may have had more information from this FBI whistleblower than just the House Republicans, and the FBI intervened to shut him down. Now, it's a bit conspiratorial. It is. So I'm not saying it's true. It's light speculation that I wouldn't say has great probability. I don't know. But I think it's possible. I think it's plausible. At the very least, the Ashley Biden diary makes no sense because Project Veritas turned it over to law enforcement. So for what reason would they have to actually go after Project Veritas and then consider a leak from the FBI themselves? Someone in the FBI has it within them to leak information. And I strongly believe they would leak that to Project Veritas. I'd love to see if Project Veritas has anything to say about that. We'll see. But this is all part of the Biden administration and the corruption, which I believe knows no bounds. Take a look at this, my friends. You love to see it. From Civics, Biden's job approval is at 36%. Approval is at 54%. Probably the most shocking to me, actually, is that among Democrats, Joe Biden's at 75% approval. Among independents, Joe Biden is at 24% approval. Even Democrats are saying no. Joe Biden's, in my opinion, done politically. We know he's not there, but a lot of people said, hey, I'll take what I can get because they didn't like Trump. That's why I believe Trump should not run in 2024, and I believe Ron DeSantis is the right choice. I do not like all of Ron DeSantis' policies. He signed on to the Israel BDS ban. I believe in free speech. But Ron DeSantis did a great job as it pertains to COVID and free speech and social media. He pays attention to what it means to be an American, to what Americans are concerned about. And on the cultural issues that supersede politics and law, in my opinion, supersede, I mean, among us as people, not legally, I believe he gets it. I don't know if Trump has it in him. Trump was the avatar of the anger of the populists in this country. Many of them were lefty, former Bernie supporters. Well, now we need someone who's actually going to know how to fight the good fight and win these political battles. Right now, we have a victory on our hands. The OSHA rule has been suspended. Use it. Tell your employers it's not constitutional. The court said so. And then say, when they come back and they issue another ruling, you can come and change and we'll talk about it. But for the time being, use it. If they say we want it, say, it's not from Biden, it's from you. And see what they say. And I'll tell you this. Here's what I say. I think the vaccines are fantastic. I really mean it. I'm not going to pretend they're the greatest thing ever. There seem to be some issues. Now they want to do booster shots. But I think look, I'm a fan of technological development, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter what I think, though, when it comes to what you put in your body. I have always had this position. I have been libertarian on drug use my entire life. If people want to go and imbibe alcohol, that is on you. If you want to go and get vaccinated, go talk to your doctor. You know, for me, I talked to my doctor and they prescribed me what they prescribed to me, and it's no one's business. I know I talked about it publicly. I'm just, it's only because of this weird issue. Freedom, individual rights, and individual choice. Tell these businesses, if they want to mandate a vaccine for you, tell them plain and simply, just sign a liability form considering it's a permanent medical procedure that you will take responsibility permanently. If I'm 20 years old now and I get this and I'm 50 and I have an adverse event, you're paying for it, or your kids will. Sign it. See what they say. And if they say no, simply say, don't you think the vaccines are safe? I'll tell you this, a lot of businesses will be like, okay, yeah, whatever, we'll sign it. But maybe they won't. Why? Because they're trying to pass off liability. I'm optimistic, my friends. We had a big show last night. Over 1 million people watched, and hundreds of thousands more are tuning in. It's incredible. Since last night, another 600,000 from the million we already had. It's amazing. You guys are great. Become a member at timcast.com. Stay tuned to tonight's show. There may be a verdict in the Rittenhouse case. We'll see. Thank you all so much for standing up for what you believe in. This is all good news. I will see you all tonight at 8 p.m. over at Timcast. At youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.